The space station floated in silence above the dead moon. It was a place of steel walls, long halls, and cold lights. Many species had come here, traders, soldiers, and travelers. But today, fear was heavy in the air. In the lowest level of the station, behind sealed doors, something waited. Whispers passed from one alien to another. They spoke in quiet voices, afraid the sound might carry. The monsters are here. They should not exist. They will kill us all. Every species had its own word for the creatures. Some called them shadow cubs. Others named them deathborn. But almost all agreed on one thing. They were monsters. Behind the thick glass of the containment bay, 12 small forms moved. They were young, barely larger than human children. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, colors shifting between gold and red. Their teeth were sharp, their claws hooked like knives. When they breathed, it came out in low growls that made even hardened soldiers uneasy. The alien council stood outside the bay, arguing. Tall insectoids clicked their mandibles. Gray-scaled reptilians flicked their tongues nervously. Soft-furred creatures with too many eyes trembled as they watched the shadows inside. They cannot be trained, one counselor said. They must be destroyed before they grow. Look at their eyes, hissed another. That is hunger. That is death waiting to happen. The debate grew louder, but not one of them dared to step close to the glass. They stood back, always keeping distance, as if the cubs could somehow break through the reinforced walls. At the edge of the chamber stood a human, Commander Harris. His uniform was plain, his face calm, his eyes sharp with thought. Unlike the others, he did not look away. He stood with his arms behind his back, studying the creatures in silence. The council noticed him and turned. Human, one of them spat. Do you not understand what these are? They are not children. They are monsters. Harris did not answer right away. His gaze stayed fixed on the cubs. One of them pressed a paw against the glass, leaving a long smear as its claws scraped across the surface. Another cub snarled, showing fangs too long for its small body. The others moved in restless patterns, pacing, circling, never still. The room seemed colder with every sound they made. Finally, Harris spoke. His voice was steady. You call them monsters, but has any one of you ever gone inside? Has any one of you looked at them closely? The council reacted with outrage. Step inside? That is suicide. No one leaves alive if they meet such beasts. Humans may be reckless, but even you must see this as madness. Harris said nothing more. Instead, he walked toward the thick doors. Soldiers moved to block him, but he lifted a hand and they froze. His authority was clear. The soldiers obeyed. A loud hiss filled the air as the first security door opened. Cold mist poured out. The second door stood ahead, waiting. The cubs turned their heads at once. 12 pairs of glowing eyes locked onto the human. Their growls deepened. Their tails lashed. The sound of claws scratching metal echoed inside the chamber. From a viewing window, the council members leaned back in fear. He will die, one muttered. It will be quick, another said. But Harris kept walking, each step firm, his boots heavy against the steel floor. His shadow stretched into the chamber as the final door opened. The cubs moved closer, forming a half circle, their bodies low, ready to strike. The air inside the chamber carried a sharp animal smell, like blood and ash. For a long moment, no one spoke. The tension was like a blade, cutting through silence. Harris stopped a few steps inside. He did not raise a weapon. He did not draw his sidearm. He only stood and looked at them. The cubs hissed, teeth flashing. Their growls shook the walls. But Harris did not flinch. His voice was low, almost gentle. You are not monsters. The cubs froze. The council outside watched with wide eyes. The growling slowed. One cub tilted its head. Its ears flicked at the sound of his voice. Another cub stopped pacing, staring at the human instead of the others. Seconds stretched into long, heavy moments. Then, one of the cubs stepped forward. Its claws scraped against the floor, slow and cautious. The others watched but did not move. The small creature came closer, closer, until it stood just an arm's length away. The council gasped. Now! It will strike. But the cub did not attack. Instead, it lifted one trembling paw and pressed it lightly against a human's boot. The room went silent. Harris slowly crouched, lowering himself to the cub's level. His eyes met its glowing stare. "You're just babies," he said softly. "Good babies." Behind him, the other cubs shifted. Their growls were fading. Instead, faint, uncertain sounds filled the chamber, something between a purr and a whine. The council could not believe what they were seeing. Inside the chamber, Harris reached out his hand. The cub did not bite. It leaned forward, nose twitching, and pressed against his palm. For the first time, the fear in the room broke. Not because the danger was gone, but because something impossible had just happened. The monsters had listened. The chamber was silent, except for the low rumble of the cub's breathing. 12 pairs of glowing eyes still watched the human. Some eyes burned like amber. Others flickered like blood-red coals. All of them were filled with hunger, instinct, and something more, something the council had never dared to name. Commander Harris remained crouched in the dim light, his hand resting gently against the paw of the boldest cub. The small creature's claws could have torn through skin, muscle, and bone, but they did not. Instead, the paw pressed carefully against his glove, testing him, studying him. From behind the safety of the glass wall, the alien council erupted. "This is madness," hissed one of the scale reptilians, his tongue lashing in panic. "He is not controlling them. He is provoking them," cried an insectoid with clicking mandibles. "Pull him out. Pull him out before he dies," shouted another. But the soldiers at the door hesitated. They had seen what the cub had just done. They had seen the human kneel among the shadows without fear. And in that moment, none of them were sure if interrupting would save him or kill him. Inside the chamber, Harris spoke again. His tone was calm, like a teacher with children. "You don't know me yet," he said softly, "but I won't hurt you." The cub tilted its head at the strange sound of his words. Its ears twitched, and it let out a low growl, not a threat, but confusion. Another cub behind it barked, sharp and fierce, as if to remind the human that danger was still near. Harris turned his head toward the sound, but did not move. His stillness was a shield. Predators respected stillness. Slowly, he lowered himself to sit cross-legged on the floor. His hands rested openly on his knees. No weapons, no armor, no threat. Just a man in a dark chamber full of sharp teeth. The cub in front of him sniffed, edging closer. Its nose twitched, its claws tapped the floor. Then it pulled back, uncertain, glancing at the others. The pack shifted. Some snarled, some circled. One leapt suddenly toward the wall, slamming its claws against steel with a screech. Sparks flashed, and the council outside recoiled. "They are testing him," whispered one of the furred creatures with too many eyes. Its voice shook. "They are deciding if he lives or dies." Harris knew it too. Every movement mattered. Every breath carried meaning. He spoke again, his voice low, steady, patient. "You're scared," he said, "but so is everyone else. They think you are monsters. They are wrong." The cub stilled, their glowing eyes fixed on him. The words meant nothing to them. Yet the sound, the rhythm, the calmness, it reached them. They leaned in, ears flicking, listening. Then, without warning, one of the larger cubs charged. Gasps erupted from the council. Soldiers lifted weapons. Alarms blared, but Harris did not rise. He stayed seated as the cub thundered forward, claws out, fangs flashing. The beast lunged and stopped. Its face hovered inches from Harris's, hot breath hitting his skin. Its claws dug into the floor on either side of his legs. The growl shook the chamber like rolling thunder. Harris did not blink. He only looked back, steady, unbroken. Seconds stretched. The cub's growl deepened, then faltered, its head tilted uncertain. Its fangs snapped shut with a click, but not on flesh. Instead, the creature leaned forward and sniffed at his chest, his arms, his face. Then, slowly, it pulled back, settling on its haunches in front of him. A sound rose from its throat, not a growl, not a snarl, but something softer, something close to a purr. The council was speechless. Harris allowed himself one breath of relief. Then he lifted his hand again, palm open, fingers relaxed. The bold cub, the first one, returned to him. This time, it did not just press its paw to his glove. It nudged his hand with its nose. The other stirred uneasily, caught between instinct and curiosity. The human smiled faintly. See? You're not monsters. You're babies. The word babies echoed through the comms, reaching every alien ear outside. To them, it was insanity. To the cubs, it was only a sound. Yet somehow, the sound carried peace. One by one, the cubs stopped pacing. Their growls softened. Their tails flicked in slow arcs. They gathered around Harris, not attacking, not lunging, only circling, watching, waiting. For the first time, the 12 cubs were not restless beasts. They were young creatures meeting something they did not yet understand. The council did not move. No one spoke. The silence pressed heavy on the glass, thicker than steel. Harris sat among them, calm as stone, his voice a quiet promise. You don't have to be what they fear. Not while I'm here. The cubs listened, and though none of the council would ever admit it, the monsters seemed, if only for a moment, less like demons of legend and more like children searching for a leader. The first meeting had begun. The next day, the council chamber was filled with voices. The arguments shook the walls louder than any alarm. Every alien present wanted to be heard. Fear drove their words, sharp and bitter. They are predators. Always predators, shouted a reptilian counselor, its scaled fist striking the table. They will grow into killers. Do not be fooled by their size, hissed an insectoid, its mandibles clacking furiously. Every record, every story, every warning from our ancestors proves it. They are not children. They are weapons waiting to happen. Cried another. Images played across the hollow screens above the chamber. Ancient recordings of the cub species. Grown adults, towering beasts of muscle and fang, ripping apart cities, tearing through armies, leaving only ruin. The memories of war were alive in every mind. The council shouted over one another, demanding one decision: destruction. In the middle of it all, Commander Harris stood in silence. His arms were folded, his expression calm, though his eyes were sharp with thought. He let their voices crash and break around him like waves against stone. Finally, the council leader raised a hand, silencing the uproar. Commander Harris, the leader said, his voice low and heavy. You entered the chamber. You touched them. You saw them. What do you say? Every head turned toward the human. 12 species stared, waiting for him to confirm their fears, waiting for him to admit the cubs were dangerous. Harris stepped forward. He did not shout. His voice was steady, carrying across the chamber with quiet strength. I saw them, he said, but I did not see monsters. A storm of outrage followed. Lies! Deception! The human has been tricked by them. The leader raised his hand again, demanding silence. Harris continued. They are young, he said. Yes, they have teeth. Yes, they have claws. So do wolves, so do lions. And yet on earth we raised them. We made them allies. We built trust where others only saw fear. You compare these abominations to your animals? Spat a reptilian. No, Harris answered. I compare them to children, because that is what they are. Gasps filled the chamber. To call the cubs children was more than foolish. It was heresy to some. Generations of hatred weighed against those words. One furred creature with 6 eyes leaned forward, trembling. And if you are wrong, if they grow and slaughter us all. Harris did not hesitate. Then that will be my burden, my responsibility, my failure, not yours. The council leader narrowed his eyes. What are you suggesting, human? Harris took a deep breath. Give them to me. Place them under my care. I will raise them. I will teach them. If they are truly monsters, then their blood will be on my hands, not yours. The chamber exploded again, voices colliding like thunder. This is madness. He cannot be trusted with them. He seeks to create an army of killers. But there were other voices too, quieter but present. Did you see the recordings? They listened to him. They touched him, and he lived. No one else has ever stood among them and walked out alive. The arguments raged for hours, until at last the leader called for silence once more, his eyes fixed on Harris. You risk not only your life, but the lives of all who cross your path. Why should we grant this request? Harris's answer was simple. Because if you kill them now, you prove your fear rules you. And if you send them drifting into the void, you waste a chance to change history. I am not afraid of them. Someone must show them another way. The chamber fell quiet. For the first time, the counselors were unsure. Their fear was strong, but so was the weight of the humans' words. Finally, the leader spoke. Very well, but know this, your choice will be judged. If they kill, it will be your crime. If they rise as monsters, it will be your curse. You will be watched. You will be held responsible. Harris nodded. I accept. The vote was cast. Narrowly, against the wishes of many. The cubs were spared. They would not be destroyed. They would not be sent into the void. They would belong to the human. When the chamber emptied, whispers followed Harris wherever he walked. Some called him brave. Others called him a fool. Many whispered a single word, doomed, but Harris ignored them all. Later that night, he stood again outside the containment chamber. The cubs moved restlessly behind the glass, their eyes glowing in the dark. Soldiers watched nervously, hands on their weapons, but Harris dismissed them. The doors hissed open once more, and Harris stepped inside. The cubs gathered around him, circling, growling softly. They pressed closer, testing, sniffing, waiting. Harris knelt among them, calm and unshaken. You're mine now, he said, not as weapons, not as monsters, as children, and I will prove to them all that you can be more. The cubs leaned closer, their sharp bodies brushing against him. Their growls shifted to something softer, uncertain but not hostile. It was the beginning of something the galaxy had never seen before, something both dangerous and full of hope. The human had made his choice, and the cubs had begun to make theirs. The first week was chaos. Commander Harris moved the 12 cubs into a new habitat, larger, safer, with reinforced walls and open space for them to run. The council had demanded cameras in every corner, so every twitch, every growl, every step was recorded and studied. The aliens expected to watch a human die, but Harris was not afraid. He worked day and night, feeding the cubs, speaking to them, keeping calm even when they tested him, and they tested him often. On the first night, 2 cubs shredded the blankets he laid out for them, tearing the fabric into strips with their claws. By morning, the room looked like a battlefield. On the second night, another cub broke the steel handle off the food locker, scattering rations across the floor. On the third, he woke to find claw marks carved deep into the walls, long and jagged like warning signs. The council members watching through the cameras whispered among themselves, "See? They are restless. They are violent. They do not belong in a home. They belong in cages." This human does not know what he is doing. But Harris ignored the voices. He cleaned the mess. He repaired the walls. He spoke to the cubs in his calm, steady tone. "You're not monsters," he reminded them. "You're just learning." Still, the test grew harder. On the fifth night, Harris woke in darkness. The lights had gone out, but he felt movement in the shadows. Slowly, he opened his eyes. 3 cubs stood above him. Their glowing eyes burned like fire in the black room. Their claws were raised. Their teeth glinted in the faint emergency light. They loomed over him, breathing heavy, muscles tense, every line of their bodies promising attack. The soldiers watching on the monitors reached for alarms. The council members leaned forward, ready to call the experiment a failure. "This is it," one muttered. "He is finished." But Harris did not reach for his weapon. He did not sit up or push them away. Instead, he stayed where he was, breathing slow, steady. The cubs growled, low and rumbling, their claws inches from his chest. Seconds dragged like hours. Then one cub lowered its paw. Another leaned down, its nose brushing against Harris's arm. And then, shock to everyone watching, the cubs curled against him, not in attack, not in hunger, but in comfort. The 3 lay across his chest and legs, heavy with muscle and fur, purring like great beasts. Their claws retracted, their breathing slowed. Within minutes, they were asleep, resting against him as if he were one of their own. The soldiers watching froze. The council chamber went silent. What are they doing?" whispered one alien. "They should have killed him," another said. "They chose not to," said a third, almost in disbelief. Harris opened his eyes to the cameras. He knew they were watching. He whispered only 3 words. "Good babies. Always." The image spread through the station within hours. Everyone saw it. The humans sleeping with the monsters sprawled across him like loyal pets. To some, it was a miracle. To others, it was proof of danger. But Harris did not care what they thought. He cared only for the cubs. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, the chaos lessened. The cubs still growled, still clawed, still tested the walls. But they began to listen. When Harris called, they came. When he raised a hand, they paused. When he spoke, they tilted their heads and listened. The council debated endlessly. "They are manipulating him," said one. "No," said another, watching the recordings. "Look at their eyes. They trust him." Trust? These creatures do not trust. They wait. They wait for the moment to strike. The arguments grew louder, but Harris kept working. He brought them food with his own hands. He taught them simple commands. Sit, stay, follow. He gave each cub a name. Not harsh names, not names of fear, but soft names, gentle ones. Names that carried love, not hate. And the cubs responded. On the 20th day, one cub dragged a broken piece of steel toward him, dropping it at his feet. Harris realized it was an offering, a gift in its own strange way. He thanked the cub, patting its head, and the creature rumbled with pride. But the true test was yet to come. One evening, a storm shook the station. Power flickered. Doors rattled. The cubs panicked, growling and snapping at one another. Their instincts boiled to the surface, wild and dangerous. The soldiers outside prepared to storm in with weapons. But Harris raised his hand. No guns. He stepped into the chaos alone. The cubs clashed in the center of the room, teeth snapping, claws slashing. One wrong move, and they would tear each other apart. Harris walked straight into the middle of them. He did not shout. He did not fight. He dropped to one knee, pressing his hand flat against the ground. The cubs froze. Their growls turned into low rumbles, confused by his stillness. Slowly, one by one, they backed away. Their eyes glowed in the flickering light, but their rage dimmed. Instead, they came closer to him, pressing against his sides, seeking comfort. When the storm ended, they lay around in a circle, tails curled, bodies pressed close. The council had no words. For the first time in history, the monsters had chosen peace over blood, and all because one human dared to see them not as killers, but as children. The test was not over, but the cubs had passed the first trial. The days of uneasy peace did not last. For weeks, Commander Harris lived inside the reinforced habitat with the 12 cubs. The council watched through cameras, waiting for the moment the human failed, waiting for claws to sink into his throat. But the moment never came. Instead, the cubs grew calmer around him. They no longer slashed the walls with their claws. They no longer tested the doors at night. They followed his voice. They listened to his tone. They began to look at him not as prey, not as enemy, but as something else, pack. Some aliens whispered that maybe the human had done the impossible. Others hissed that it was only a trick, that the beasts were waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And then, before the debate could be settled, the pirates came. It began with alarms. Red lights flashed through the halls of the station. A deep voice echoed through comms, warning. Outer defenses breached. Unauthorized ships detected. All personnel prepare for hostile boarding. The cubs leapt to their feet, ears flat, tails lashing. Their glowing eyes widened as the alarm wailed. The sound of danger set their instincts aflame. Harris stood quickly, speaking in his calm voice. Stay close. Stay with me. The cubs snarled, restless, ready to fight. Their claws scraped the floor as they circled him. Outside the habitat, chaos filled the station. The pirate ships had punched through the defense grid. Dozens of raiders stormed the docking bays, armed with rifles and blades. Their laughter echoed to the comms, cruel and mocking. Easy pickings, one pirate jeered. Take the cargo. Take the slaves, burn the rest, another growled. The station security forces rushed to fight, but the pirates were many and they struck fast. Explosions rattled the walls. Screams carried down the corridors. The council panicked. They sealed their chamber, calling for evacuation ships. But even as they tried to save themselves, one pirate leader gave a new order. Find the beasts. Word is, they've got monsters locked up in here. Rare blood, rare bones, worth a fortune. Bring them to me alive. The raiders grinned. Monsters to sell? That was profit beyond measure. They cut their way into the habitat sector. The first door exploded inward, smoke and fire filling the air. Pirates stormed through, weapons raised, eyes gleaming with greed. The cubs roared. The sound shook the chamber like thunder. 12 voices, deep and furious, bellowed as one. The pirates froze for half a second, stunned by the sight before them. Creatures glowing with fire in their eyes, teeth flashing, claws scraping the floor. Then they laughed. Look at 'em, just pups. Scary eyes, but small enough to chain. Don't waste ammo, take 'em alive. They charged. The first pirate lunged with an electric net. He never reached his target. A cub sprang forward faster than sight, claws flashing. The man's scream ended in a wet snap as the cub tore through his armor and sent him crashing to the wall. The other cubs followed. The chamber exploded into violence. Claws ripped, teeth sank, bodies flew. The pirates shouted in panic as the pups they mocked became a storm of fury. One cub leapt onto a raider's back, jaws clamping on his neck. Another knocked a pirate flat, tearing his rifle away with a savage twist. Two more slammed together into a group, smashing them into the steel floor. Blood painted the walls. The council watched through the cameras, horrified. "They're killing them!" cried one alien. "See? They are monsters!" screamed another. But Harris was there too. He stood in the center of the chaos, his voice cutting through the roars. "Protect the babies!" he shouted. The cubs heard him, and though their claws tore, though their fangs ripped, none turned on him. Not once. They fought around him, beside him, shielding him from every strike. One pirate aimed a rifle at Harris's chest. Before the trigger was pulled, a cub slammed into him, jaws snapping his arm like dry wood. Another pirate threw a blade, blocked as a cub leapt into its path, taking the strike but standing tall, unbroken. The cubs were not fighting as wild beasts. They were fighting as a pack. His pack. The pirates began to break. "What are these things?" "They're devils." "Get out, get out." They scrambled toward the door, but the cubs chased them down. No mercy, no hesitation. The raiders had come to capture children, and now they paid in screams. Within minutes, the chamber was quiet again. Smoke hung in the air. Bodies lay scattered, weapons broken, blood soaking the floor. The cubs stood in a circle around Harris, panting. Their fur matted with red. Their glowing eyes looked to him, waiting, not monsters, soldiers awaiting their leader's next command. Harris looked at them, then at the cameras where he knew the council was watching. "You see," he said quietly, "not monsters, guardians." But the battle was not over. More pirates stormed the sector. Explosions shook the walls again. This time, heavier boots, stronger weapons. The true assault had begun. The cubs growled, ready. Harris tightened his fists. He turned to them and spoke in a voice of iron. "Stay with me. Protect each other. We fight as one." And together, man and cubs charged into halls. The corridors of the station became a battlefield. Pirates poured in from the docking bays, guns blazing. Harris moved with the cubs at his side, dodging blasts, shouting orders. "Left flank, strike." Two cubs surged forward, slamming raiders against the walls. "Hold the line." Three cubs blocked a narrow hall, their bodies forming a living shield, snarls shaking the air. Push forward. The rest charged, claws cutting through armor, sending raiders fleeing in terror. Everywhere they went, the pirates fell, and everywhere they fought, the cubs circled Harris, guarding him as though his life mattered more than their own. For the first time, the council watching was silent. No insults, no shouts, no calls for destruction. They simply watched in awe as the monsters fought, not against them, but for them. By the time station reinforcements arrived, the pirates were broken. The surviving raiders fled to their ships, engines burning as they tried to escape the slaughter. The cubs stood victorious, bloody but alive, gathered once again around the human. When the smoke cleared, the council faced Harris in the aftermath. He stood with the cubs behind him, their glowing eyes calm, no longer filled with rage. "You saw what happened," Harris said. "They were attacked. They defended themselves. And they defended me. Tell me, are those the actions of monsters?" The council was divided. Some lowered their heads, unable to answer. Others glared, clinging to their fear. "They are killers," one alien spat. "No," Harris answered. "They are protectors." Because someone finally gave him a reason to protect. The cubs pressed closer to him, brushing against his sides, tails curling like loyal hounds. The choice was no longer only his. The cubs had chosen too. They had chosen him. The battle was over, but the war of words had only begun. The pirates were gone. Their ships fled into the void, leaving wreckage and smoke behind. The station was damaged, but still standing, and it was still alive because of the cubs. 12 young creatures had defended it with tooth and claw, following the human who called them good babies. To some, they were heroes. To others, they were proof of the danger everyone had feared. Now the council would decide. The Great Hall of Judgment was carved from stone older than the station itself, taken from the first colony ships centuries ago. High pillars reached to the ceiling, banners of 12 species hanging heavy from the walls. At the center stood a raised platform, glowing with pale blue light. Here stood Harris. Behind him, 12 cubs sat in silence, their glowing eyes fixed on Crowd. The cubs had been cleaned of blood, their fur brushed, their claws retracted, but nothing could hide the power in their bodies. Every alien in the chamber knew it. The seats of the council were filled. Reptilians with scaled hides, insectoids with clacking jaws, furred beings with many eyes, feathered creatures with sharp beaks, all of them watching, all of them ready to pass judgment. The leader of the council rose. His voice echoed, "Commander Harris, you stand before us to answer for your actions. You defied the will of this council. You took custody of creatures marked for destruction. You allowed them to live. And in the chaos of the pirate attack, you unleashed them. Blood has been spilled. Lives have been lost. The question before us is simple. Did you save the station, or have you doomed us all?" The hall buzzed with whispers. The judgment had begun. The first counselor stepped forward, a reptilian with scales like black stone. "These beasts are killers," he hissed. "We saw them tear through pirates as if they were nothing. That is not loyalty. That is hunger. Today they killed raiders. Tomorrow they will kill us." He pointed a claw at the cubs. "Look into their eyes. Do you not see death there?" The cubs growled softly, but Harris raised a hand, and they went silent. His voice was calm. "I see children," Harris said. "Children who fought because they were attacked. They fought to protect me, and they fought to protect this station." The reptilian sneered. "You are blind, human. They are weapons. Nothing more." The second counselor spoke, an insectoid with long limbs and clicking jaws. "Do not forget history," it said. "The adults of this species destroyed entire colonies. They burned worlds. Their claws are sharper than steel. Their hunger never ends. What you see now is only a stage. They will grow. They will become like those who came before. And when they do, you'll not stop them." Harris answered, "Every species here has a past filled with blood. Reptilians conquered 3 planets before joining this council. Insectoids harvested 2 civilizations for food. Even humans have fought wars that burned nations to ash. Yet we learned. We changed. Why must these cubs be denied that chance?" The insectoid clicked its jaws in anger. "Because they are too dangerous." Or, Harris replied, "Because you are too afraid." The chamber stirred. Whispers rippled across the seats. Some agreed. Others hissed in rage. The third counselor rose. A small, furred creature with 6 eyes that glimmered in sorrow. "I watched the battle," it said softly. "I saw the cubs fight. Yes, they killed, but I also saw them shield a human. I saw one take a blade meant for him. That is not hunger. That is loyalty." Gasps filled the chamber. Some counselors shook their heads in denial. Others leaned forward in thought. The furred one looked at Harris. "Tell us, human, why did they protect you? What makes you different?" Harris turned to the cubs. They sat close together, tails brushing, eyes steady. He placed a hand on the head of the boldest cub. "Because I saw them not as monsters," he said. "I gave them names. I gave them care. I gave them love when no one else would, and they chose to protect me because of it." He looked back at the council. You fear them because you never try to understand them. You see claws and teeth, but you never looked into their hearts. I did. The leader of the council raised his hand. The chamber fell silent. Enough. We have heard the arguments. It is time to render judgment. The air grew heavy. The cubs growled softly, sensing the tension. Harris placed a calming hand on them. One by one, the counselors gave their votes. Destroy them. Send them into exile. Keep them locked in cages forever. But there were other voices too. Spare them. Let the human keep them. Give them a chance. The votes clashed, nearly balanced. Fear battled hope. Tradition fought change. The chamber shook with the weight of decision. At last, the leader stood. His eyes swept across the room. The council is divided, he said, but the law is clear. When we cannot agree, we give one chance. A test. A single chance to prove worth. All eyes turned to Harris. You will take the cubs away from this station, the leader said. Far from our colonies. Far from our people. You will raise them. You will teach them. If they become monsters, their blood will be on your hands alone. If they become more, his voice tightened, then perhaps we will see them again. The council erupted with noise. Some shouted in rage, others in relief. The decision was made. Harris bowed his head. I accept. That night, as the council dispersed, Harris walked back to the cubs' chamber. They followed him closely, brushing against him, rumbling softly. The cameras no longer mattered. The judgment was given. He sat down among them, one hand resting on the boldest cub's head. You heard them, he said quietly. They think you will fail. They think you will become monsters. The cubs leaned against him, their eyes glowing in the dim light. Harris smiled faintly. But I know better. You're not monsters. You're good babies. And I will prove it to all of them. The cubs purred, deep and low, their bodies warm around him. For the first time since the beginning, Harris felt the weight of destiny pressing on his shoulders. The council had given him one chance, one future. The judgment was not the end. It was only the beginning. The transport ship cut through the void, leaving the station and the council far behind. Inside, Commander Harris sat with the cubs. 12 young creatures, once called monsters, now pressed close around him. They purred softly, their glowing eyes calm, their bodies curled like giant, dangerous kittens. For the first time, they were not in cages. They were free, but freedom came with weight. The council's judgment echoed in his mind. Raise them. Teach them. If they fail, their blood is on your hands. He looked at the cubs, at their sharp claws and their warm trust. He whispered to himself, then I'll never let them fail. The journey was long. Days stretched into weeks as the ship traveled to a remote, uncharted world on the edge of known space. A place where no species lived, where no voices of fear could interfere. It was here Harris would build a home for the cubs. But raising them was not easy. The first challenge was hunger. The cubs ate more than he expected. Their teeth could tear through armored plating, and their bodies burned energy faster than he would supply. Harris spent long hours in the ship's workshop, building food processors that could create enough protein to satisfy them. The second challenge was discipline. The cubs loved him, but their instincts were wild. They wrestled constantly, smashing walls and furniture. They tested their claws on the ship's doors. Once, one cub tried to leap out of the airlock when it opened. Harris grabbed him at the last second, his arms straining against claws that could cut steel. He didn't yell. He didn't strike. He only held the cub tight and said firmly, "No. Stay with me. Stay alive." The cub whimpered, then licked his hand. Bit by bit, they learned. On the 42nd day, the ship finally landed. The world was quiet, with blue skies and endless green plains. Tall mountains rose in the distance. Rivers glittered under the light of two suns. It was untouched, pure, waiting. Harris stepped onto grass. The cubs followed, wide-eyed. They sniffed the air, stretched their legs, and roared at the open sky. The sound rolled across the plains, fierce and proud. For the first time, they were not prisoners. They were explorers. Harris smiled. Welcome home. The years began to pass. Harris built a settlement from the wreckage of the ship. Small at first, just one shelter, a food generator, and a training ground. But as time moved forward, he added more. Watchtowers, storage huts, a great fire pit where he and the cubs would sit together at night. The cubs grew. They no longer looked like children. Their bodies stretched taller, stronger. Their claws grew sharper, their fangs longer. Their glowing eyes shone brighter than ever. To anyone else, they would have looked like nightmares. But to Harris, they were family. He gave them names, simple ones, human ones. He taught them words, slow and careful. He showed them how to hunt without cruelty, how to fight without rage. He taught them to protect, not destroy. And they listened. On the third year, strangers came. A small ship entered orbit, scanning the surface. At first, Harris feared pirates again. But when the vessel landed, it carried not raiders, but traders. A mixed crew of alien explorers, drawn by curiosity. When they stepped out and saw the cubs, now almost full-grown, they froze in terror. By the stars, one whispered. They're alive. Weapons were drawn, but Harris stepped forward, raising a hand. They will not harm you, he said firmly. They're with me. The aliens hesitated. One cub growled, baring teeth. Harris spoke sharply. Stand down. The cub obeyed. The aliens stared in shock. These things listen to you? One asked. They're not things, Harris replied. They're people, and yes, they listen. The encounter ended peacefully. The traders left in disbelief, but their reports spread. Rumors moved from colony to colony. The monsters live, and they follow a human. The council heard too. On the 5th year, the council sent a fleet. Not pirates this time, but warships. They came with cannons ready, prepared to burn the world if necessary. Harris stood with the cubs, no longer cubs, but young adults. Their bodies towered over him, each one a predator strong enough to tear through armies. Yet they stood calm, silent, waiting for a signal. The council leader appeared on the main screen. You were given a chance, human, he said coldly. Now we come to see if you failed. The warships lowered transports. Armed soldiers stepped onto the planes, weapons aimed at the creatures. The young ones hissed, but Harris raised a hand. No, he said softly. Show them who you are. The 12 beings lowered their heads. They bowed before the soldiers, their glowing eyes soft, their claws folded away. The soldiers froze. The counselors gasped. Harris spoke. You gave me one chance. Here's the result. They are not monsters. They are not killers. They are children who grew into guardians. They chose peace when they could have chosen blood. Can you not see? The leader stared for a long time. Then, slowly, he lowered his head. Perhaps for the first time in history, the council admitted it had been wrong. Years passed again. The cubs grew into legends. Harris grew older, his hair gray, his face lined. But he never left them, and they never left him. They became protectors of their world. Travelers came, seeking trade, knowledge, or safety. The young ones guarded them. No pirate dared attack their land again. Some even joined the council's armies, standing as living proof that fear could be conquered, that even monsters could learn loyalty. And always they returned to Harris, to the man who called them good babies when no one else would. On the final night of his life, Harris sat by the great fire, surrounded by 12 towering beings. Their glowing eyes were no longer filled with fury, but with sorrow. He smiled faintly. "You're not cubs anymore," he whispered. "You're my family, and I'm proud of you." They leaned close, pressing their great heads against him, their rumbling purrs filling the air. And when Harris closed his eyes for the last time, he did not die alone. He died held by the family he had saved, loved by the ones he refused to abandon. The years rolled on. The beings carried his name as honor. They told his story to every species, every traveler. The legend spread. The cubs once called monsters. The cubs every species feared. The cubs who followed a human who refused to walk away. No one called them monsters anymore. Now, they were called something else. Guardians. And at the heart of their legend, one name lived forever. Human.